Welcome. This is the DNX Show. We're here every Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm one of your hosts, Todd Ryan. Josh Reason is my co-host. Josh will be joining here in 10-15 minutes. We're going to get rolling today because we have a big outline. And you can check it out at dnxshow.com no, not slash outline. That's it. Just go to dnxshow.com and you'll see the outline. But still, we have an open conversation here. So any topic that's domain related, it doesn't have to be domain investment related, but that's really where we try to focus on domain name investing topics. But if it's related to domains, that's domain news. Even like when we do the legal news, it usually has an effect on investing in domain names. As I mentioned, we have a pretty big outline. I wanted to start off really just saying, yesterday, for those of you, we have an industry organization called the Internet Commerce Association. You can go to internetcommerce.org, and if you're interested in joining the organization, but it's really definitely top domain investors, all the registrars that you use. There's registries, but there's the domain lawyers, all the brokers. Really just, it's an industry organization, but it's heavy with domain investors. So it's really a mouthpiece, I consider, for domain investors. And since domain investors are somewhat important, certainly important to brokers and the domain lawyers, I'll tell you, they get their business from people that own domain names. So it's important to them. Domain lawyers, weird group, because they usually have expertise in usually intellectual property law, because you can't just focus on representing domain investors in UDRPs. You go broke, and many of them do. But so domain investors are the sort of the glue that everyone really needs. Even the registrars, right? And the registries, we always discuss. Sometimes we debate on how important domain investors are to registrars, and I think it's like in Vegas when the not the high roller, the average gambler. It is very important to the casinos, but it's really the high rollers that make the casino the money. But all the the average players, add up. So sometimes the GoDaddy wants to focus just on those who are spending a lot of money in their expired auctions, and those are domain investors usually. But as general, do they care a lot about a lot of us that spend money buying hundreds, maybe even thousands of domain names, when they make their bread and butter off of small companies who buy those other services like hosting, anything from privacy. But anyway, I'll buy all those upgrades. Thanks for joining, and like I said, Josh is going to be here in about 10 more minutes. But so that broker Tom call, we don't want to share everything. It's for ICA members, but what did you take away from it that you remember? And I'll bring up a couple points that I thought were very important and worthwhile to share with everybody.
Yeah, hey Todd. Yeah, it was a really good call. I mean, he's the lead broker for the largest domain company in the world, right? So he's pretty well positioned to have a lot of pretty good insights. He shared some of his tactics, and overall, I guess there's probably it's not a secret that that he does a lot of sales with domainnames.com, and that's GoDaddy's sort of spin-off of their ultra premium domains. And he basically said that there's sales there that would pretty much take over Ron Jackson's list. So it just goes to show that they're getting some volume, some good sales. So it's still relatively new. I still, for one, I think they're the only GoDaddy's the only company in the world where domainnames.com, for domain name company is actually a downgrade, simply because of the literally the billions they've spent on marketing the GoDaddy brand. But it is what it is. It seems to be doing well. Again, I don't want to do any spoilers, because obviously it was meant for ICA members, but he did share some tactics. He answered some questions. that were really helpful to me. So I was pretty happy about that. Um, not too sure what we're really supposed to be sharing or not. So I'm kind of a little bit hesitant to say
Yeah.
too much more.
I don't
But
think they can, bottom line is they're probably going to have another hour with Tom because it was so good. And I don't think we would share enough. It's almost like wetting the whistle and, what they're
yeah,
going to do. They can only just say to me, Todd, don't share so fucking much. But
yeah,
here's some things that you touched on. One, he did say less than 1% of sales were reported. And it's unbelievable. He was talking about so many sales, and he really acts like he would like for the sales to be reported because there's just
yeah,
so many big sales. Like you said, he said, hey, if they were reported, we would be taking over Ron Jackson's top sales all the time. And it's
yeah,
because, right, they have the big portfolio. And I mean, of course, not just talking about name find. They're all their customers that they represent. So it's uh, an enormous number of domain names in the millions. And then um, Tom mentioned another thing that I think anybody that's a top, especially top salesperson, can relate to. When he started, he said he'd be coming in at 3 in the morning, 3:30, right? And for the first 2 hours, there was only, um, you know, some of the overnight
yeah,
workers there. But that's a common, practice or common denominator amongst top performers. You get there early. When I was young too, and I was gonna say, I tried to live close by an office, so it was easy for you to be there early or the first ones and stay late, and it didn't bother you too much. It's important to do things like that in order to become, he's sounds like, not just self
yeah.
self-described top broker. He really is their top broker. And now he said that he focuses on the big deals. And of course, he's earned it, earned the big deals. Um,
Yeah.
what else
It
were you
sounded like
thinking?
over the yeah, I was gonna sound like over the years he set up like you set up a steady foundation. Like he was talking about when he came in early, he would create some templates and stuff like that. Just things that would make him more efficient in the long term. I mean, as a broker, obviously, the one-on-one communication, as you gave a few examples, is really really important. But I mean, if you could clear away some of the wasted time of repetition and stuff like that with templates for preliminary contacts, that really lets you have those hour-long conversations and whatnot to help close those sales. So I was pretty impressed with him overall. I haven't really heard much from him in the past or knew much about him, so that was really eye opener. Again, it's the biggest company in the world, and it's they're going to have a lot of information. I always wish I could look at the back end of all the data at GoDaddy, and that's he didn't say everything, but still some good information there.
One other point I'll bring up that I think everybody would find value in is he said, someone asked the question, what do you do in a case where the seller just has, I want 5 million for the name, and it really seems a bit overpriced. It's not some single word, but so what does he do in that case? He said that I think is really important was first he doesn't even try to go to the seller and say, hey, are you willing to move down, or why do you have a price so high? He said the first thing he would do is leave the seller alone, go to the buyer, and first of all, any potential buyer, get a solid offer, even if it's far off. Maybe it's still $100,000 offer on a name that's priced at 5 million, but get what Tom felt is a reasonable, solid offer, and that's you get that, and I won't go into all the things that he said about how he makes sure that when someone makes an offer that he locks them down, that it is firm. You're not just throwing out numbers, but
Yeah,
um,
in writing. Yeah,
yeah,
put in
but
writing. Yeah,
then he said, then he'll go back to a seller, even if it's, um, they're still really far apart. If he's got a solid offer, then he'll talk with the seller or, about the pricing. But there's no reason to see if a seller's willing to move off their pricing if you don't have really an offer, a solid offer to begin with. So the big prices didn't scare him when he sees, sellers. And we're going to talk about that today. I think it's delusional pricing because there
yeah,
was, an article we're going to touch on too today by Rob over at Snagged about he was talking just about some things that he noticed last year as now his company's done about $25 million in sales last year. He and his partner, about things he noticed with founders and naming. And he's posted recently that, yeah, some of these sellers just want these sky high prices. And I think, Rob feels like a lot of us, well, we know prices can be, you can price them what you want, but some of us feel like, hey, that's not a single word name and that's a two word and there's a lot of other options. So you asking seven figures for something that is not, it is one of a kind, we know that, but still some names, like I said, they almost are replaceable, or you can, there are alternatives. So Rob was talking about this. It seems like some sellers really do have delusional pricing, but then you can still make the case. A lot of domain investors do that. No, it's not. I'm waiting for that one person, and if that person doesn't exist now, I'm waiting for them to come along and decide. You know what? That's the name we want for our company, and we're willing to pay big money for it. I mean, just you can play both sides as a domain investor. Yeah, go ahead.
It's all numbers game, right? And you can shoot the moon, but your sell-through rate will suffer, right? Or suffer might not be the right word, because in some cases, depending on the domains, it will be the better option, right? It really depends on your portfolio. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer depending on what's in your portfolio. And sometimes you want to break your portfolio in half, with half of your stuff being okay. That moonshot buyer is realistically out there, right? But the problem is, a lot of people come into this industry and they hype up their own names and they fall in love with their own names, and they think that they're those specific names, especially when you're coming in, are irreplaceable, where they're not, right? Like, I mean, I have no dreams of grandeur, right? I come in, I buy stuff at closeout mostly, as you know. I've upgraded a little bit in the last year or so, but for the most part of my domaining path, it's been like mostly closeouts and whatnot. And I have no dreams of grandeur. I do very well selling domains in four figures and now like low five figures, right? And it works for me. I'm profitable. But like, if I were to change my pricing to moonshot prices, I probably would get the occasional high five-figure sale, right? But like, what are the chances? Would I still make as much money or not? I don't know. I don't think so, right? I'm right now. I've upgraded a little bit my portfolio, so I am making some sales a little bit higher. But that's, I think, is the right way to go. Is you start off with realism, right, and then you work your way up and you figure out what has the potential to sell at a higher price and what doesn't. And it's not always obvious. And when you have that experience and sales under your belt, it really, really helps distinguish between two categories, because there's never necessarily a right answer or a wrong answer for that question. It really depends on the domain name itself.
I wanted to let everybody know. Obviously, you guys know this is the DNX show. It's an open conversation, so any topics you have, please come on up. Josh is on his way in now. He had to handle some things. It's early afternoon for him. It's 10:15 right now here on the West Coast. You guys know 1:15 on the East Coast. But open conversation. Matter of fact, I'm gonna invite David up because I see he put something pretty interesting on Twitter, on X today. Our domain's liquid. Let's put that to the test. He has a great name, CRATES.com, Crates. And, Crates, I think many uses across, there's some obvious, but across several industries. He has it priced for 24 hours, for the next 24 hours, a $19,950 price. I was going to ask David, what motivated him to do that, but just, outside of that price, where does the price go back to? And, I think we all know, our domains liquid? No, they're really not liquid. Even great names, I wonder in 24 hours, what would be, will it sell at 19,950? There's not a big audience. I was going to say, who knows what the audience is like? It comes down to his followers, people. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and
Because
repost it.
24 hours is not, I mean, either way, it's very limited,
Yeah.
in terms of visibility. Maybe
Imagine if
72
everybody
hours a week,
reposted
can
it.
see.
I mean, that gives you a little bit, but still, I agree. Are very, very limited. David, thanks for joining us. So, great domain name. Well, tell us a little bit behind what you're trying to test here, and how long have you owned Crates, and tell us a little bit of background.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for sharing and bringing me on stage. Yeah, I bought crates a few months ago, towards the end of 2025. I bought it for a few reasons. Obviously, it's a great name, oneword.com. Uh, Great for anyone who wants to do, shipping containers, storage crates, milk crates, anything in the logistics industry. Because my background, I did logistics for about 25 years, and I bought crates all the time for my clients, for people who want to ship custom motorcycles, custom, back then TVs were expensive, so we used to crate them, all sorts of things. So I thought maybe I'll develop it. If I don't get to it, I could always flip it. Also, it was the end of 2025. For me, for tax reasons, I needed to invest some money, unless, if not, I would get taxed for a lot of, because I had a great year, 2025. So those are the reasons. Wanted to develop it, tax benefits, and I got it at a great price. I got it from an individual who used it for years, something for marine related, for a place called Crates or something like that. So not even in the logistic industry. And well, being a domainer, I'm not going to develop it. I don't have time. I'm so busy developing my own marketplace, ultrapremiumdomains.com. So I figured, let's see the liquidity. And the reason why I put 24 hours is because before I posted the price, I DM'd a lot of private investors, my own clients, people who we all know in the industry, and I've gotten a bunch of offers. I've gotten 16,000, 17,000, a bunch of LTOs. So that's the ballpark that I received.
Were
So
those just to ask a question? Were those 16, 17 before you set the 19 publicly,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah, of course, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I figured, if these guys are serious, what's another 2 or 3 grand for them to move up?
yeah?
And for me, I'll be happy with the 20 grand. I'll make my profits, move on, invest in more domains, and take it from there.
No doubt. I think it's a
Well,
great
congrats, that's a
price.
good
Well, let
name.
me let's check Josh's microphone. Josh has got here. Thanks, Josh. Nice to see you. Anyway, what's up?
What's up? What's up?
So,
Sorry for being late again. Thanks for holding it down.
no sweat. But Josh, we were just talking about broker Tom had an ICA AMA yesterday. It was pretty good, and it's always good to hear from somebody who's so active and over at the biggest place. And we touched on that. I don't know if you were part of. Were you part of the call yesterday? Did you see it?
No, but I heard about it,
Yeah.
and
Well, you'll get the replay because you're obviously a member. So,
yeah,
I,
yeah. I mean, I know Broker Tom very well. I've worked closely with him for a couple years now, I would say. And what you guys will have seen is just a little taste of what kind of how good he is as a sales rep, and how driven he is as a you know business asset to GoDaddy. I was just telling a friend in a Discord discussion this morning that um, Broker Tom is very like he's very very rare when it comes to like being able to get an employee like that on your team, working for your organization. It's extremely rare. I was saying that we used to hire 100 plus sales reps every year at the finance company that I used to some ownership in when I initially got started in my career. And I came up from a sales rep to being a sales director. And when we were hiring these guys, we were hiring them from the top places in the country. Cornell, UCLA, uh, USC, other like Ivy League schools, and I could tell you like firsthand that for every 100 people that we hired, we wouldn't even get one that was like as driven and as kind of intuitive and had that level of aptitude that you just can't teach, like Tom has. And GoDaddy are pretty lucky to have him, that's for sure.
well, I got to say, when people say you hit the nail on the head, Josh, I felt the same way when I'm listening to the guy, and I'm like, I'm an old guy, and I've been around, and when I was thinking exactly that, geez, what this guy on all cylinders he hits, meaning basically he was telling us, now he's I would say what do you call it, seasoned, very seasoned now, but when he was new, just his aggression and his motivation, and then just his skills of basically just a first class negotiator, but really knows how to work with folks. But I was just thinking, geez, he's just such a wonderful employee, meaning, he's really a leader. He's just really one of a kind, and somebody who, like you said, you dream of as an employer to have somebody, because you're lucky that he stuck around for so long. But I mean, it's really tough to find. The more he was talking, and Josh, he was sharing a lot of the tips. When you watch the replay, you're going to realize, yeah, so he was actually sharing some really, I would say, some of the secrets to negotiating. But you'd have to be slick enough to know how to use, how to incorporate this into your style, like Tom does. I mean, he's really almost like a chameleon too. But yeah, I thought that immediately, like, geez, boy, did they score with this guy. And he seems to be very happy there. So I'm sure he's getting compensated good, because he's too smart to know, I've learned this, area of business inside and out, being a domain broker, a lot of opportunities. So it does tell me a little bit about GoDaddy too, that he respects and appreciates them as a company enough to stay there. And I felt that way with some of our premier reps that a lot of us like, some of the guys that we deal with daily. They've been around for 20 years. So it does rub off a good look on, GoDaddy as well. We went on. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say that, I still see it far too often where employers don't necessarily appreciate enough, like that kind of unicorn employee. But you know, Tom seems pretty happy, so I assume GoDaddy looking after him pretty well.
Yeah, we
Yeah, I have to say also
Hey, Todd, real quick, sorry to jump in. Somebody just hit the bin on the checkout. So
congrats.
domains are liquid.
fantastic. Josh, we were talking about, David posted, anybody want to buy crates in the next 24 hours, 19,950, and, just posted it. So I'm going to say it was my repost that helped you, David. David, listen, you've
You
done a
did
great
it.
job all year long, but no, nice to $20,000 sale. We'll touch on that. Josh, you can say whether you think how well the buyer did on buying crates for 20,000. But Arif, what was your comment? Why you got it in your head?
Just
Yeah,
want to say one more thing. Sorry to cut you off. I have to step out. I'm on the way to play basketball. That's my thing every Tuesday and Thursday. It's 9 p.m. for me almost.
Nice.
So I'm going to head out. I appreciate the time, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Have a great day,
Hey,
and the
congrats on the
replay is
sale.
going to be available.
Thanks.
All
I
right,
appreciate
Arif,
it.
what's
Talk
up?
to you guys later. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna go back to the other thing. My rep, like you guys know, I I complain a lot of times about GoDaddy, but my rep is absolutely outstanding. Like really, he's really good at customer service. He really understands the platform and what's going on there and the strategies, and he's like really, really amazing. So there are good things at GoDaddy, and this weekend I had an issue, technical issue, and together me and him we kind of figured out and brainstormed a little bit, and we kind of came to the conclusion of what it was. And there's a workaround that we're going to figure out. Well, it's already figured out, type of thing. And so yeah, I mean, just I cannot say enough good things about my rep at GoDaddy.
Hey, thanks, Arif. And no, I know, people know we're all critical. Listen, I've been a GoDaddy customer 25 years or however long when they started business. And some days I'm not in a great mood, especially when I was more building stuff with in using their hosting. But separate that, Josh, so David sold crates for 20,000, 19,950. If you're, that's I mean, I can see somebody buying that because it's a single word and it's actually, usable in certainly business, CRATES.com. If you were a domain investor and buy that for 20,000, say you're not the end user, but you are a domain investor and you pulled the trigger because you just wanted to have a single word like that. How would you price that now? And do you think that's a pretty good buy as an investor for 20 grand?
I think it's okay. Um, I think David was on our show when he was talking about buying it a few months ago and how excited he was about buying it. I think he maybe paid like 15 or 16, something like that. And how good of a name it was, and that he was going to sell it for a lot because he knew the industry. So I would say it's not a great sign that he's decided to sell it for 20K a few months later. Sure, that was probably a good reason for that. In terms of like, is it a good buy? It's not. It's not terrible. It's definitely not a bad name. It's not a name that I would like go out and hunt to put in my portfolio, but it's certainly got meaning. It's certainly got value to the right buyer. If I owned it, I would probably be asking for 150K. And I think that 20K as a buy price is fine. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, Josh,
Yeah,
for
as
that.
you said, logistics is a big industry, right? And same thing if it's like just moving as well. Like, was it Pods? I think is a similar company that could be compared to in one end, but also just like international logistics is the billions and billions of dollars every year. So yeah, it's a good name.
I think, one thing he did show is, all right, so he bought it roughly almost in that range, but he was, if he was just testing, are domains liquid? Well, it's unusual to be able to, I guess not so much get your money back. If you buy something, especially a single word at a good price, and then you're willing to unload it for that same price, um, or right around there, it's not going to be too difficult. I'm curious. When I say too difficult, I'm curious. He said he reached out to a lot of the folks we know in the space who buy names, and we can imagine who those are. He said he got offers 16, 17, right there. Um, I'm just thinking, yeah. I mean, if I was thinking the name would be a retail of between 50 and 100. Josh said he'd price it at 150, but then I'm always low. I'm always thinking of, about, we're going to get to this icon. I wanted to talk about that for a second. That big sale that was like 12 million, and I guess the company went bankrupt, which has nothing to do with the domain name really. But if you want to take a
I don't
look
think
at,
that's I don't think that's true, by the way. But I think that they just something was down, like their hosting was down or something. I'm not sure if it actually went bankrupt. I
yeah,
don't think there's any confirmation of that.
yeah. I mean, and if anybody wants to take a look at our outline, go to dnxshow.com. We have a bunch of topics we were going to talk about, so I just touch on those. But if you have a domain investing topic or domain topic, of course, it's open discussion. But okay, so Josh, when but both sides, people buy a name, you got a seat at the table. But then when it doesn't work out, domain investors like don't blame the domain name. It's it takes a quality business underneath the name, basically a good plan, good leadership. It takes a lot of stuff. I always felt like, the domain it's not like the title of a movie. It's much more valuable than a title, but it really is just one piece. So in some cases it can give you a seat at the table, but if you're a fucking idiot, so you're sitting at the table, they're gonna tell you got to get up and leave the table. I guess I've always felt like Rob put it pretty good in his article that I was going to touch on that he wrote, about a name. It only goes basically. It only goes so far. I mean, let me get you the quote. It was I don't know why I like this. I like this quote. Domains don't create product market fit, but they do accelerate something that's working. So, he's basically saying a premium domain won't fix a weak product, but when you have momentum, then having this, fantastic domain name, easy to remember, really, enhances your marketing. And of course, we all believe that. But I guess the question, how important is a domain? I guess it just all depends. But if you don't have a good business plan, you don't have good leadership or a good product, domain's not going to save you. Do you feel the same way, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I probably feel more strongly than anyone that um, you know, I think that our industry specifically and the people in our industry overvalue domain names. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree with Josh too. I mean, domain will certainly, boost you significantly. It can, but I mean, if your foundation isn't, laid out properly, you mean multiple things to go right, and domain can certainly enhance. We're going back to the moon, right? So we call it a rocket ship. Rocket ship, you could have the best booster in the world, but if you don't, if the other parts aren't sound, you're just going to fall apart before taking off, or in the atmosphere. So you need to have a good business plan and a good team and right timing, and there's so many factors that come into play. And yes, a good domain will help you, right? But how much, who knows? But I agree with Josh. It's as much as I hate to say it, it's not the only important thing.
That's how I was speaking of Rob over at Snagged wrote this article, and you can see the link on our website at dnxshow.com. But he was basically, one of the things that I thought was, he just had really a lot of good points in there. I mean, that really easy to understand when you're thinking, okay, how much do founders value domain names? And he speaks to a lot of them, and he was saying that he thinks now they're becoming more deliberate than they ever have, meaning about when they decide a premium domain is worth it. So they'll at the beginning he had a quote about getting a good enough domain, just a name that's worthwhile. Most importantly, spend time on the product, the business, and then the only issue he sees with waiting to get a name is sometimes you wait long enough where the price continues to increase, and then it's more for you. But he just felt like he really believed, and I think you guys saw some of his posts on X, that domain investors many times overvalue your names that we're just talking about now. He talked about sometimes there's delusional pricing. I don't know if Rob said that, or Josh, you might have said it in one of your X posts, but when I wanted to touch on that delusional pricing. Some domainers, they have single words, they price it high. They'll tell you it's a single word, but yet you have to say not all single words are equal. So is there more delusional pricing in the domain aftermarket, or how do you feel about that, Josh? I mean, when you're out there, you're seeing, people are now coming to you wanting you to help negotiate, them on the buy side. Are you seeing a lot of pricing out there that is, unrealistic, or not? It's a anomaly, as they say, or not so much? Yeah, by the way, my questions aren't that great today, so we'll try to make it through this motherfucker.
Are you asking if there's a lot of unrealistic pricing out there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of delusional
Yeah,
pricing.
I mean, the short answer is yes. Very delusional pricing, 99% of the time.
Yeah, there's lots of domains that are priced at like $2,000 and $3,000 that are also delusional, right? They're just domains that are worthless. So all ends of the spectrum, there's a lot of people who overprice. And every now and then one of them sells, and then it makes everyone else feel like they did the right thing.
Yeah, you guys can expound. I'm looking at some of my notes, because it was some takeaway for founders, that basically there was something that came to mind. That's what I was mentioning, icon. But Rob was saying domains. Let's see, it was about, think of domains less as a launch lever and more as a multiplier that activates only after the business is real. Okay, so we already touched on that. But this icon name that was, for sale 13 million, or it sold for 12, I guess 12 million. I don't know what it was. If that's back on the market again, Josh, do you think there's any issue? You think, all right, well, no biggie. They'll get that 10, 12 million back. I mean, is that name, if you had Icon, where do you price that at? I mean, I know it's a wide range and fucking stupid question, frankly, but I mean, Icon, is that an 8-figure name?
Yes, it's an 8-figure name, but it's an 8-figure name because we already know that there was a sale for 8 figures. So If they sold icon.com for 5 million, it would also be a good sale.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just grasping here. I obviously got these fucking articles. There's this guy who Ron Jackson did a story on, and I have a link, and I think his name's Gary Millen. Another article, but he owns world.com. Apparently, he owned doctor.com, lawyer.com. Maybe it's his partnership. I'm sure there's some folks in the crowd who probably know much more than me on outerspace.com and scientist.com, calendar. But he and his partners, they've been around forever out of New York City, from what I understand. I got this link to Ron Jackson's article. But when I think of, those type of portfolios, just, enormous value, and you can't, what is lawyer.com worth? They have, doctor.com. He had where you go there and you search for a doctor. I guess you could put in your insurance, and you could also search, your city. I don't know who searches, I thought most people would go to their health service provider, whoever it is, their insurance company, and then you look at their list of providers. So, a site like doctor.com, enormously valuable, but they built it out and then sold it. They weren't selling just the domain name, and they're doing the same with, lawyer.com and so on. What's my point? I don't even know what my point was there. What really I was thinking, what a fantastic portfolio. I guess it's a partnership. And when I look at, those types of portfolios, that's who I consider to be, the kings of the domain industry, when people own a lot of names like that. Let's see. Okay.
Is that the same entity that put was it super.com up for auction at one of the names cons, like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago? So there are a few really amazing domains that they gave to Monty. I want to say, was it during the COVID auctions, the online ones? I'm not too sure, but about 5 years ago or so. They were also out of New York.
I don't know. I feel like I'm on stage and I'm just bombing, and
Can you hear me?
it. I like it a lot. I
Talk
like
to
it a
me.
lot. Hey, okay, well,
Talk to you.
yeah,
Oh,
I can hear you. Yeah, no, I can hear you. It's fucking fine.
my mute button, the light is not working anymore. It seems it's weird. Anyhow, keep going.
No, everything looks good. I was gonna say, anybody want to chime in? We got tons of topics. I wanted to get to something that's interesting. That was one about this tax season. Right now, it's going on. I wanted to say, domain name Wire had an article, and I think a lot of you have been reaching out to Afternic about, okay, these 1099s. If you guys remember last year, it was just a big fuck up. They sent out the 1099s. They show that you fucking sold $30,000 worth of names, and then that was after their fees, and then they had to reissue the 1099s to say, actually, you sold 40,000, but 10,000 were fees, and the previous 1099 you need to get rid of. Bottom line is, it was a big mess last year, and then this year, no, I didn't get one because I didn't do 200 transactions. Did I do what you have to do? Let me see here. It was 20,000. Okay, so I did do that, but you had to do $20,000 plus 200 transactions. Okay, so if you hit both of those hurdles, $20,000 in gross sales and 200 transactions, then you're going to get a 1099 from Afternic this year. Now, in some cases, if you live in Arkansas and you fucking sold something for 2,500, Arkansas expects you to get a 1099. I don't know what the story, but the point is, who does 200 transactions? Now, maybe if you had 20 lease to owns, and we didn't know, I didn't know how they're doing the lease to owns, but if you had 20 lease to owns and they were, the whole year, you got 12 payments, let's say, all right, well then 20 times 12 is 240. So then maybe you did have 240 transactions and your gross was more than 20K. So you'd have to have a lot of lease to owns, or basically you just have to have so many sales. But Josh, I guess I'm going to ask you, well, I'm sure you hit the 20,000 threshold, but did you get a 1099 from Afternic? I mean, did you do 200 transactions a year there? Taxes. All right. No, doesn't like to talk about taxes there. Um, anybody here do 200 transactions at Afternic? Go ahead, Eric.
I say I'm in Canada, so I can't help you there. But it's kind of bonkers to think somebody have 200 transactions and not just automatically meet the $20,000 threshold. Just I don't even know if it's possible. Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, like I
But
said,
they were saying, so is the reason why they have a lower number of was it 1099s that you called it, whatever it is, that they sent out, is that because of this new threshold, like the 200 transaction or 20,000? Is that a new threshold for this year? Could that be it?
I guess so. I guess one of the laws that passed at the federal level did change it. Now, it was about a decade ago when you used to get paid on PayPal or used to get any transactions on Stripe. In basically, you still have to report. So I want everybody to know your tax situation is not really affected by whether or not somebody reports or not. But I mean, it certainly gives the government more data on transactions you're doing. But for a long time, you'd get a lot of PayPal payments through, like I said, through Stripe, and then all these different apps, whether it's Venmo or Cash App and so on, and they didn't have to report. Finally, it was probably 10 years ago now, maybe even more, that they said if you're doing any transactions through PayPal, for example, and it's more than $20,000 in a year of transactions and more than 200 transactions. And a lot of people on eBay, you do a lot of transactions. You might do 200 obviously in a month. We did a lot, and then 20,000. So everybody started getting 1099s from PayPal, and you would, basically then you knew, at least you then knew what was reported to the government by these, payment processing companies. Um, so that's exactly what happened. Basically, with Afternic, they were, I guess, obligated to report everything over a couple $1,000s a couple years ago, and now there was a change that said you guys are basically a lot of these companies are issuing a lot of 1099Ks. You don't need to do that anymore. We'll make it so you only have to issue if an individual meets these thresholds. This year, it's 20,000 in gross sales and 200 transactions. It's not or, it's and. So that's the big deal. A lot of us have done 20,000 in sales through Afternic, thank God. But 200 transactions, you do 20,000 in sales, that could be from just 3 or 4 sales. And a lot of us that have portfolios, if we did 200 transactions, individual, we'd be living life to the fullest. That's just a lot of domain transactions. So if you're selling, photos like I do still on eBay, you have big eBay accounts. That's not a lot of transactions over the course of a year. Domain names, it's an extraordinary number of transactions. I mean, I think even some of the biggest sellers that we know, you'd have to have even 20,000, 50,000 names in a portfolio to sell 20,000 or 200 names, and then those would all have to be through Afternic in order for them to 1099 you. Hey, Brad, thanks for joining us. What comment or question do you have about this?
Hi. Hey, Todd, Arif, and Josh. Thank you for letting me up. There's a lot of things that you're talking about. And just with respect to the tax thing, could you maybe expand on how you do report your domain portfolio at tax time with respect to, let's say you bought 200 names this year and you have 500 or 1,000 in your portfolio that you keep renewing, but you've only sold like one domain for $5,000. How would you report that? I mean, I have an accountant that does it, but and I think it's like it's called capital gains or something like that. But I think for the audience to hear, a process that you go through, that would be informative for the rest of us.
Yeah, right. First of all, I was going to say we'll have an accountant on here, but no one wants to talk about how they report their taxes. But I was going to say with domains, usually there's two ways that people do it, and you want to stay consistent from day one when you've done it. Maybe, I started 20 years ago. So your expenses on domain names, your revenue from domain names, and you can do it a couple different ways, and that's when I'm going to send it to the accountants, and that is you have these business expenses as domain names, and then you have these the revenue that you get from your domain names. Now, when it comes to as an investment, they can be treated differently with regards to you're an investor and you're buying at these prices, and then you're selling, and there's a short-term or long-term capital gain. You'll hear from accountants saying what you want to do is you want to sort of pick a path on, are you, especially if you list as your occupation, some people are full-time domain investors. Okay. And there's many folks who are, it's almost a hobby, or they don't even make money at it. So they could actually not be considered, they could be considered really just, like I said, income and expenses with regards to what they're doing with domains. But you want to, I know you really want to stay consistent, but if you are, your occupation is a domain investor, then I've never had that as my primary occupation. So I would be curious of, I'm assuming that they would go down the path of your buying names. Here's your expenses on your investments.
It's not even.
and then,
It's not. To be fair, it's not even an occupation that you can select. So you can't select occupation domain investor.
well, sure. I mean, but
So,
you list it. I mean, you would many times people will write in what is your occupation, because there's a lot of new, I would say new occupations. But right, well, we would have
most people I know just put like consultant or something like that.
Right. If you put your occupation domain investor, and right next to it is you're delusional, probably.
or maybe audit, definitely. It's always sensitive, Brad, and I know you're speaking on. You're really trying to help out an audience because everybody wonders the same thing each tax year. What should I do? And I forget. Didn't we have? There's a member of the community
No,
that's
but
an
you know what
accountant.
you said. You said the most important thing, Todd, and that is be consistent. Right. I mean, whatever you have reported, keep that as what you report it as.
Well, and some people have businesses set up that that's a separate thing. They have an entity that handles all of their business transactions, and sometimes they, like I said, a lot of people are involved in other businesses. So then funds get or there's business revenue that's commingled, or expenses that's commingled, and your accountant probably tell you shouldn't do this, but many small businesses do, and that's between you and your tax person. I've always been involved in a lot of different businesses. Some we couldn't write off taxes. I'm no longer in those businesses where they were maybe legal in the state, but federally you couldn't write off certain things. So everyone has really unique tax needs or requirements, or really things that issues that they need focused on. So you really need to find, obviously, an experienced professional. Michael, I know you wanted to chime in here. Thanks for being here. What's going on?
Happy to speak. I'm learning a lot from you guys, so I'm very appreciated. What I done what that guy was explaining, that didn't pick up his name, was I went and I registered a foundation in Dubai, and that's how I done it, and that's tax free then.
Didn't even remember to
Well, I
bring
don't
that
think
up.
that's not an option for many of us. I'm sorry to say, but that sounds like that would work.
It would work if you have 1,000 domains and you put 500 of them into the foundation. It's clearing up 500 and for you. I only started out in May, and I've already started it. Now, I've never sold a domain through Afternic or GoDaddy or anybody's site. I'm contacted by the who is basically saying no, because I've really killed domains, and it's just like a person is trying to contact you, a broker from another agency. This is our email. If you want to reply to them. But be careful. And I sold 10 domains without even trying.
So does that mean you have your who is record open to the public?
No, it's basically when somebody's looking for the domain, they write to the domain and they'll see it online. They're all private. They'll see it online somewhere, and basically they will contact who is direct looking for. Will they put them through? Will they put? Will they put who is through to the, sorry, a bit of a sore throat? Who is through to the owner, and the email is included, and then the who is sends it forward to you. The email they got, and it's up for you to reply it or not. Like, I made some pretty good sales and absolutely ridiculous sales that I paid £1 for. I made 4.5 grand in what was it? S
We're not
four
going
S.
down this path again. We're just not. Otherwise, I'm leaving.
No, I'm just saying, like, I was just, that's what I done. I put half them away and put half of them on. I keep half them local, you know.
Sorry, I was doing some. Hey, I mean, I didn't know what we were talking about. I wanted to get to first. Let me say hey to David. David's here, Domain Insider. David, what comment or question did you have? Then we're going to talk about some key words to avoid when registering domain names, because Josh made a comment about like the word artificial. So Josh, think about that. But first, David, nice to have you. What's going on today?
Hi Todd, hi guys, how you doing? Everything great, everything good. As you said, I'm here in Panama. I was really looking at some data because I was very impressed that crates.com sold for 20 grand. But I think so that you have to put into the equation a few more things. And I think that those are the things to look many times when somebody uh, sells a name for close to cost or below market value, and it's opportunities that the seller may have, cash situations, uh, other huge opportunity that he needs money, so he rather divest crates.com and get that into a different asset or a better asset. But definitely that's very important to take into consideration, and not to think that crates.com doesn't have a market and it could be sold for much more depending on the time frame. Now when I look here, there are 7,000 plus domains registered with the word crates and 26,000 with the singular crate. It's taken in 151 extensions. The crate market, it's in the billions of dollars. Many industries require very unique crates made out of unique wood, plastics. All the big beverage industry goes in crates. I know a company in Chile that does over $450,000 selling crates. They are one of the main suppliers of Coca-Cola crates in
This is
Latin
the this is
America.
the this is the this is the exact same pitch that the guy that sold it for came on and said 4 months ago when he bought it, and then he proceeded to sell it for about a $2,000 or $3,000 profit. So while this is all true, doesn't mean to say that the domain name is a super valuable domain name that these type of companies are going to pay for, because quite frankly they're not. These kind of domains don't move. um, when you do get lucky and someone like that is interested in buying the name, they typically don't want to pay a lot for it. So yeah, while you're correct about the market, it doesn't necessarily translate to a super valuable domain.
Well, he didn't have it for much time. We don't know really who he reached out for. I actually represented that company in Chile for almost 20 years, and I was involved with them making all the plastic boxes for meters in Latin America. And
Should have sold it to you.
well, I if I would have known about it, I would have given them the number of how to call them directly. I wouldn't get involved in that. But I think that I'll tell you something very quickly. Alan Hack reached out to me one day and said, David, I have a guy who has an incredible domain. I'm not going to mention the name right now. Alan Hack, I'm giving you a guy who was involved with the Marchex portfolio, with the GoDaddy portfolio. It's known in the industry. He said, David, this is a huge name. The only thing the guy needs the money by tomorrow morning. And he gave me the name of the domain. And I said, what? He said, yes, that's why I called you. Tell him it's sold. And at that moment, I know why the guy needed the money. He has a lot of money, mostly all invested. He was finishing a huge project with his brothers. And to open up this huge project, they had other money put in. They needed 30 grand. By 9 o'clock, the guy had the 30 grand, and the name came to me. And 5 years ago, I was offered 350,000 for that domain, and we're looking to have it develop and live within 4 to 5 months. We declined the offer of 350, and he had it many years. He was looking to develop it. It didn't happen, and it was an opportunity. Now, I don't know who bought the domain for 20 grand, if it was an investor or an end user, but it all depends how much you want to really make your name know and how much you want to hold it. I would have never sold, other than if I would be in a situation where I either need the money or a huge opportunity and I need to put more money together. But and the people that know me
Well, what
know it,
about
I
well,
would
what
have,
about
I,
what about when you reach out to this company and they said, "No, David, I have zero interest in crates.com." Would you feel like
well,
you might want to sell it then?
I would tell you this, that I know these people
No,
and
but
I know how much they paid for the .com when they only owned the .cl. So I'm going to tell you that they bought from some domain investor and paid $25,000 to get their .com. So
that's
they are
it.
not ignorant. Well,
That's it.
that's what the guy. Well, that's the problem. That's what the guy asked, and that's what they paid for their .com. You
Yeah,
know,
but
every
you
day
sound exact
you know better.
you sound exactly like the guy that was on here before saying
Yeah,
how big the industry was and how there's so many buyers for it, and
right.
and now 3 months later he sold the domain wholesale in for
And do you know how
$2,000
many?
profit.
Well, you know how many times you have bought a domain wholesale for 2 grand and you have turned it over and sold it for 30. You know, I bought a name at GoDaddy for $212, and I
Mhm.
turned around and sold it for 138,000. And I can
Okay.
tell you what the domain was timetobuild.com. I bought
Okay.
it at an auction for $212, and I sold it for 138,000.
Okay.
So you know better than nobody. You are looking every day for great deals that you are not going to
Yeah, I
pay
think that
for two or three grand.
I think that timetobuild.com for $200 is a much better investment than crates.com for 20.
Okay, but who bought it for 20? An end user or another
I
investor
don't
or
know. I don't know. My point is that you're like the pitch that you're saying is I agree with you. I mean, like there should be a buyer for that name. Like there it's a big market. Like I completely understand. But when all of these when like this previous guy, he literally said he had connections in the logistics. He worked there his whole life. He obviously went out and outbounded this name for the last 3 or 4 months, and they all said no, we have no interest in it. Clearly, I mean, he might not say that that's what happened, but that's clearly what happened. And now he's like, okay, I'm just gonna have to sell this on wholesale to the next person.
so
The
what
net,
I'm
then
going to say is Josh, you know these, everything we can say here, you know it. But I got a broker from GoDaddy who drove me crazy to give him a name for 50 grand. I declined it. Later, I spoke to Andrew Rosner, and within a month and a half, he sold it for mid six figures. So
things, yeah, I
it
mean,
all.
no doubt, things can change quick. Tomorrow, the same guy that he reached out to and didn't want crates.com could decide that could have an epiphany and decide he needs to have a crates.com and he's willing to pay 500K for it.
No, what I'm
Anything
saying
anything
is
can
that
happen.
I'm saying that it all depends also who is selling the name, what kind of Rolodex you have, who you're going to reach out. It depends
100%.
who reaches out.
100%.
It depends who reaches out. It's
100%.
I think that a guy, a broker going crazy that how I'm not going to sell it for 50 grand, that I'm crazy, that when I bought the domain it was 2 grand, and very very stupid approach to make a seller give you a name. And it's totally different when Andrew Rosner gets the name and reaches out to someone, and that person says, I want to buy it. He puts his conditions, he calls me up, sell the name was sold within 24 hours. I had the money. So
100%. I
what
100% agree with you. And actually on that point, just to bring things back full circle, and then we can go back onto this topic again. Next week we'll be launching our brokerage, and Media Options is going to be the featured broker on DNX. So if you do want to have your names represented by them, you can submit them through the DNX management platform starting next week. So you'll be able to sell a
that
lot more names.
that's great. That's fantastic. The industry needs more options, and good options. People who will work for your names and get your names out there properly. What I was just saying is that irrespectively when the name sells or not, I think that the 20 grand sitting at crates.com is a better investment than many other investments people have done in other words, because that's a product, that's a whole industry. Crates cost a lot of money. Molds to make crates go in the millions of dollars. So it's a good investment. Now, again, we have to see why the person sold, and out of his whole portfolio, why he decided that after 3 months it's not worth it keeping that name any longer. But I don't know, you don't know, but it was just a comment that we may be surprised that the guy. We have seen many names that sold the name jet, and years later they get sold for many times more. And there are many names that sold, for example, a name jet, and 10 years later they get sold for a quarter or half the price. But uh,
Not,
I don't
not
remember. I don't remember right now what name was bought a name jet for 75 grand and ended up being flipped for 2 or 3 or 5 million dollars. And it was managed and handled by Andrew. But right now the name doesn't come to me. But it was a very short name. So yeah, we may find out that the guy who bought crates.com ended up flipping it for less or more or much more. We just don't know. You know, everybody's luck and how smart or ingenious people are selling names. But it's great chipping in here. But when I saw that name in somebody's portfolio, I think it was ultra premium names or ultra premium whatever. It was not ultra premium.com because I own that name, but I think it was ultra premium domains.com. And when I saw there crates.com, I thought that it was a great name. Thank you, guys.
does anybody know what he had it listed for? I mean, after 3 months, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't say much if it wasn't sold. But I'm just curious what he had it listed for. Was there a bin on it prior to
I don't
the?
think so. I don't think so. When it was listed there, had a buy now. I think he has the top names with make an offer, but they had no pricing. I'm sure of that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, David, you're right. It was Ultra Premium Domains. That's David Susteel's website, and yeah,
Right,
I mean,
right.
and he was saying exactly what Josh said. You know, making the case just like you made, David. I have to, I do, and I think Josh was agreeing too. I agree that when you search the term crates too, it's just unbelievable the usage out there from little those plastic crates that kids in college put their beds on, bullshit like that, to big moving crates to the enormous crates that, in big commercial industrial type crates. So you could certainly see a big company saying, hey, we think crates is a fucking great name. And I like it better than crate almost, because it just, I don't know, crate um, sounds like some kind of old Greek island. But okay, so uh, anyway, interesting, yeah, to move it. But David, you did bring up a good point too. Sometimes you're like, hey, no one needs to know. People can say, I don't need the money, I don't need the money. But many times you have your investments not in stock where it's easy to liquidate. It's in domain names. And he may say, hey, I know David sells a lot in the gaming space. And he might think, hey, I think some of my domains that have 77bet or 77 slots. I know he has names like that. He might think those I have more success at selling even than these single words. And then when I try to liquidate these other names in my portfolio, I get nothing. I get $100. At least this one I could turn into 20 grand maybe. And you're right. So I need the cash. You go back to your assets and you, which ones are the ones you actually can, flip that people have any interest in. Josh, before we get to some of these keywords that you said to avoid, because there's a few that come to mind. There's always the ones that come to mind that I really like. But before we get to that, so that's pretty big news. DNX opening the brokerage. I know some of the brokers you're working with, you just said media options. So is it going to be that simple? You submit a name, and then you guys are just going to, you obviously not accept every name, but you're going to have a place, submit the name. We're going to get back with you and let you know whether or not we want to, represent it. But are you going to be asking for the domain name and the person's asking price? Tell us just a little bit more about how the brokerage is going to launch.
Sure. So DNX is essentially just going to be the enabler of the platform. We will start most likely with media options and Brooke from probroker.com. Those will be the only two options to submit to. You will submit from your domain management system, which will also be the registrar later in the year. You select your names. You can select your entire portfolio, or you can just select individual names. There are some restrictions on number of times that you can submit and all that good stuff. You submit name with price, minimum offer, and floor price. You choose which broker you want to send it to. The contract and terms are all then electronically agreed to. When you submit, along with the success fee outlined, which would depend on, the broker's fees as well. You have to preset your servers to DNX before you can submit. Then, if the broker approves the submission, the domain automatically will have a co-branded lander, special co-branded lander. And then the broker will work through the DNX platform. It's a kind of similar to if you've used DNX for your landing pages and inquiries. They'll manage it in a pretty similar way. It's all hooked up and streamlined with escrow.com. It's all pretty intuitive once we get around to that. For the most part, we're kind of positioning it as inbound brokerage for the better names. The top tier names that I'm sure the brokers will do outbound as well. But it just depends on the type of name at the end of the day. It's pretty sleek. I'm pretty excited about it. I think that we will add more brokers as time goes by, but there's no way to apply as a broker. We'll kind of hand select who we want to partner with, and who we don't. Simple as that, really.
I think it's great, Josh.
Yeah.
I mean, the people, everybody, we want domain investors. We want all sorts of options. We love that DNX is, expanding any area that, especially you're the leader of that company, your vision of what do domain investors, what maybe have some value to them, what do they want, as a domain investor, but also some things that sometimes us as investors, we're not sure what would help us here. And plus we want some new stuff, new innovative stuff. Now brokerage is not innovative, but to be able to submit it this way, like you said, just simple of agreeing to some things, electronically, and then having your dashboard, all in one place, and then you're going to know which names that you have, say under brokerage that's through DNX. But I think it's great that you're just doing, a lot of stuff. Like you said, also, this is going to be where you're going to be able to register names through the registrar later on. But, DNX, obviously not the only company doing a lot of innovation here. Really, not just innovation, but companies trying to, create new products to stay relevant and stay alive from, uh, the traditional ones from, Spaceship doing some things. And I say traditional, older, Namecheap, Spaceship trying to innovate, Dynadot. But we know Atom is doing some great new things. Unstoppable, trying to get domains under management. This is the DNX show. Like to, really hear what's going on at DNX.com. But I wanted to, I just think it's, great that, offering these it's almost new features or new services. And even if, some of them catch on, I think this one is going to be really important to domain investors as having, you being the go-between between the, domain owners and the brokers. But it's,
Yeah, I mean, let me
yeah.
let me just say before we move on. I think that the only real streamlined platform for having brokers represent your names is Afternic, right? And obviously they come with a pretty nice network and reg path with it, which is certainly why most people use them. But there's not an easy way to have your or a streamlined way to have your portfolio represented by different brokers, and there are plenty of good brokers in the industry that do things differently. A lot of the time, some brokers want to represent portfolios and not have prices on the landing page so that they can extract the max value from each serious buyer that comes in. There are different ways to sell your names, right? I know that Adam is in the crowd. He doesn't have any of his names on any marketplaces, so he treats each lead individually and prices the name accordingly when the person inquires. And there are some brokers that want to do that. So it's just another option that doesn't, in my opinion, just doesn't really exist out there today. And people can choose to use it or not. And it's as simple as that, really.
Sort of related, Andrew Alleman was saying at DNW, yeah, 5%, a 5% commission is not sustainable. And a lot of brokers, they'll charge, 10, 15, 20, 25. It depends on, if somebody's really doing some work and basically marketing it, I could see someone saying, our normal commission's 15, but we're going to be charging 20 in this case because we're going to be promoting it at this event or something. But I guess the point is that we know 5% was low when Spaceship was, offering this 5% commission over there. Andrew Alleman said it's not sustainable. And I posted on his LinkedIn, well, Chad and I created this AI broker. Okay. So, we're only at version 1. It's basically an AI being the broker. And we believe, yeah, there's something there. It's still too early, meaning it needs to, a lot of work needs to be done. I don't think until we're at sort of a version 3, because now we got this version 2 that we're getting ready to test amongst ourselves. But the point is, it's really, people believe, Andrew said 5% is not sustainable. And I said, yeah, if we can get AI to do the job and then we can get people to start transacting in stable coin, I don't know, 5% may be realistic in the horizon. I know it's not here today. Believe me, I know we're messing with it. And it's in today with traditional rails, traditional payment card processing. And let's just say it's 3%, which you should be able to get it closer to 2. if you're doing a lot of transactions. That certainly eats into, a 5% fee. But are you, is this going to be standard commission, standard brokerage commission that those brokers normally offer to their existing customers? And do you believe that there is going to be a future where a lower commission is going to be sustainable?
So for us, we have a maximum total success fee of 15%. It won't be higher than that. So we won't allow brokers to charge more. If they want to charge less, they can. The do I think that 5% is a sustainable fee? No, I don't. Um, not at all. If you know me or you've had discussions with me, I'm pretty like pro capitalism, and I have a pretty capitalist mentality. And I don't think there's such thing as like a free lunch, and 5% just doesn't work when you consider all the things that we want as domain investors, right? We want slick technology, we want a network, we want um, support, transaction support, we want payment processing, and like you can't, that just doesn't fit. FD CEO Doran summed it up pretty well. I mean, sometimes just for the payment processing you're talking like 3%. There's nothing left on the bone. Like the company providing the service needs to make money too. And Dan, by the way, when they were at 9%, it wasn't sustainable. They weren't making any money. They weren't making money at 9%. So I think 10% is fair, very fair. Especially Spaceship has a great product. They have a great network. The second best network after Afternic. 10% is perfectly is a very fair commission.
Yeah, like you guys know, I can be pretty vocal about commissions, but like 5%, I don't understand how people complain they went from 5 to 10. I mean, the only thing I could maybe understand is people said, "Well, it was all of a sudden you didn't notify us," but that's separate, right? That I can understand that, maybe a little bit more notice, whatever it was. But the bottom line is, 5%. There's just no money to be made, and on top of that, you have to add the fact that Spaceship, their renewals are below cost, right? And transfers in are still $8. So it's like they got to make their money somewhere. What I understand, people are upset that goes from 5 to 10, but then they don't say anything when Afternic actually charges you an extra 10% just for not using their landing pages, for not using their bandwidth, right? It's just I don't understand where people's rage goes. You have to have some common sense. 5%, like as Josh says, like some credit cards are even more than 3%. So the fees are there, and then you have to add all the your staffing, your customer service, your servers, and all that stuff. I mean, I for one think 10% is very fair. Even with Afternic, if everything was 15% Afternic, I wouldn't ever say a word about Afternic commission. They have syndication and all that stuff, and they have syndication within GoDaddy, and GoDaddy actually puts a cost at the search results, which I think is a little bit bonkers because that should have been the expected sort of understanding as Afternic users. But still, if they want to say it that way, fine. But 15% is kind of a little bit where my limit is at. Unless you're getting like extra service, like with Adam is paying ads for specific domains, right? It's not just their like GoDaddy is putting ads up for GoDaddy, but Adam actually puts out ads for individual domains. And in those cases, I can understand if they have extra expenses that's they have to charge more for that. But for just regular listings, I mean, 10% is more than fair. It's actually, I think it's pretty generous.
Well, we're talking about too, if I'm thinking more of like direct purchases, and we know, so when someone goes to a domain name, eventually we want it to be, they went to the domain name, it's my own lander, because now you have a Spaceship lander. We don't know, would they have bought it if it was your own lander? And then, of course, if it's your own lander, you got to still have a credit card fee or an escrow fee. So what we're saying, eventually there's going to be a time when someone comes to me and says, Todd, I want to buy this domain from you. And I say, okay, it's 15 grand, and you give me 15 grand, and I keep 15 grand. Fuck the credit card fees. That's already too high. 2%, 3% is too high. What if credit card fees were 5%? And we wouldn't be saying, well, it's okay. They're marketing costs to get MasterCard or get Visa in every store. The point is, if someone's adding value and you're going to their marketplace, we talk about GoDaddy, Afternic, their network. If they're finding you because of that network, but as domain investors, sometimes people come right to the domain name, buy it directly from the owner, but yet there's fees involved. Okay, and there's fees involved because, well, you wanted to use somebody's servers and you wanted to use their lander. So now for their lander, whether it was effective or not, now if they only bought it because they felt comfortable because it said spaceship, or they felt comfortable because it said GoDaddy, or they just liked the layout and they felt like, and you now we know we can mimic these nice looking lander pages. So I guess the
I
goal
guess, I mean,
is,
there's no such thing as no fees, right? That's a
only
First
when
of all,
only when people
that's
are
a
going to
complete
transact
myth
via
because you can't, because
stablecoin.
you're not,
Yeah,
well,
when you do,
you're not a payment, you're not a payment
well, Zelle,
processor.
you can,
You don't,
someone wants to buy a name from me for 3,000 and they want to Zelle me the money. Yeah, that's no fee.
well, you've still, you're, that's no fee, but I don't think anyone here wants to do that because that puts an awful lot of risk on both you and the seller. Like there's a reason why escrow exists, you know?
Well, sure, and I think there's going to be escrow that's going to be such a fraction, especially when it comes to, um, you put your money on, basically like we're talking about how on chain, why there's going to be trustless transactions, and so the money gets paid. It's not going to get released until the domain is received, but it's not happening right now enough. But sure, when people know, hey, we trust you, say they trust you at DNX, so they know, Josh is saying if you buy a name here and you pay for it, it's going to get delivered, and you've never not fucked around and not delivered. So they pay directly to
Yeah, but
DNX.
there's always going to be a technology fee associated. Like someone needs to make money for providing whatever technology you're using to facilitate the transaction.
Well, the thing is, what I'm getting at is when you create your own landing page and you're using your own, not that, say I post right
How did
on
you create the
X.
landing page?
I
How
post
did you
right on
create the
X.
landing
I'm
page?
selling this domain name. Somebody wants to buy it from me. I have to break X off because they let me use their platform.
Todd,
Yeah,
1 second, Josh,
yeah.
sorry. Everything is possible. There are thousands of options, but I can guarantee you that 99.9% of the people, when come to a lender that they have never heard the company and they need to give you the money one way or another, they're going to doubt tremendously. I have sold domains on GoDaddy for much more money that they were listed in other known platforms
Of course,
because they
of
felt
course.
listen, I'm going to pay 16 grand for 3 grand less. I may lose my money and never get a domain, and they go and pay GoDaddy, and they don't mind about that. I once was talking to the largest university in Mexico. In that university, obviously in multiple campuses, they have 250,000 students, and they wanted a name that I bought for myself, and I paid 5 grand for that name. And this man on the phone said, listen, this is going to be the greatest platform. We are going to get all students, when they leave, they graduate, they're going to have a business waiting for them. They're going to have a job. And it inspired me very much. And I said, well, listen, let's figure out how we do this. And he spoke with me 3 minutes. He said, do you have PayPal? I said, yes. Give me your email. I gave him my email. And 3 seconds later, he told me, okay, I will later today give you where we want the name transferred. Send me the information, the transfer code. The money is already in your PayPal. That was it. But that doesn't happen every day. So I just got an offer through Spaceship, and I went back with 12,450. And Spaceship tells you, do you want to pay for the commission? Do you want the buyer to pay 50% or 25% of the commission or the entire commission? And I said, no, seller pays 100% of the commission. I don't mind giving Spaceship 10%, and the buyer should just know that this is what he has to pay. He may counter, but why would we start telling the buyer you got to pay 50% of the commission or 25% of the commission? Give them the price, and that's the end of the story. If you're trying here to save money in the commission, man, you are not a businessman, or your domain has no value. These people are going to take this domain because the price I gave them is a bargain, and I don't mind giving Spaceship 10%, as I never mind giving them the 5% when they were charging 5%. And when I have had to pay GoDaddy 15%, and that's what they charge, go ahead, take the money, give me my money, and that's the end of the business. But thinking that people by themselves, they're going to put a landing site and they're going to use a processor and all that, use your time for much important things than trying to go and sell the domain on your own in your own lander. If I go to any lander and it's not GoDaddy or Spaceship or maybe Cedo, I'm not doing anything because I don't know who the hell you are.
Well, I
Your
know, but
website
yeah,
could
you're
have been
just.
done
I'd love to hear you have a conversation with Rick
in
Schwartz. I mean, Rick's going to say, "Listen, from Drew to Adam here in
listen,
the crowd, Adam
brother,
Strong.
brother. I'm
When
not.
these guys,
I'm
when
not
these
going
guys
to
have
let
a
you
name
go on.
and somebody
Nobody
contacts
in
them
this room
directly and they say, "Hold on," they say, "We agree to a price. Wire me the money." All right, there's maybe a $20 wire charge or something like that. But I'm saying there are a lot of transactions where people are saying, yeah, we're cutting out. Why is there no? And I love when Josh says success fee, because you're right. You don't say commission, you say success fee, and you don't say to somebody, sign this for me. Say authorize. You start using these words when you're really out there fucking closing deals. But the point is, when it comes to some guys do their own, like I said, when Drew or Adam sells their names from their own portfolio, well, right, they're not paying a commission to themselves. It's all going to, no, I'm not saying they could. He probably has an answer saying, yeah, we will. We got our company structured this way. But the point is, everybody, if David, if I said, hey, I heard you talking on one of these goofy ass shows and you said you own this name, singles in fucking, Spanish, I forget the name you have. But
Yeah.
anyway, so you own this name. Well, I want to buy it from you. Um, One, do you accept crypto or not? How about if I just wire you the money? You're not going to go, well, hold on, I got it listed at places if you want to pay a commit. You're going to say, yeah, what'd be nice is you pay me direct. There's going to be no fees. Only the fees is going to be like when you accepted that PayPal payment. PayPal took their fucking money. But wouldn't you like it if there was, if they would have said, well, can we send it to you via Zelle? Like here in the States, when someone says, how about if I just send you the $3,000 via Zelle, or I can send it via
Todd,
pay you with a credit card, you would say,
all of this is applicable to all areas of business, by the way. And it's the same. It's the same thing as the guy that comes and wants to come and clean my windows in my house, right? And there's one guy who wants me to send him send money via Zelle or get cash out, and there's the other guy that comes with his iPad and lets me swipe my card and we're done. And I can tell you that the business that is having more success is the one that is streamlining the process and using the technology that's available to them and not worried about things that are not part of their business. And setting up landing pages, taking payment processing, making adding friction to an already cumbersome process, which is buying and selling domain names. It's not in your it's not in your best interest. And if you want to if you want to reference the best names in the world that guys like Rick Schwartz have sold in the past, sure. Yeah, that's a different story. There, when someone comes along and wants to buy property.com, that's a super outlier that doesn't apply to anyone here basically. And when and I follow the same process, on my absolute best names, and I want to be a part of that negotiation. and I want to put the escrow fee on the buyer, and whatever I say I want to retain. But for 99.99% of my portfolio, that's not applicable because I want to simplify the process, not make it more complicated. Simple as that for me.
Well, there's no doubt.
And Todd,
That's
I
Credit
have a point.
cards
exactly.
is. Hold
Most
on,
of
Arif.
the
I'll let you
people
go there.
don't
Let me
have.
just say something.
Most of the people don't have Rick Schwartz names, and Rick Schwartz can sit down and wait. Years ago, he was getting offers from a company or someone, 500,000. 6 months later, 1 million. A year later, 2 million. He never responded to that buyer until they went over 5 million. And then he ended up selling the domain for 8,888,000. So we are not talking the same thing. The first person I ever heard about domains was Rick Schwartz in 2011. But nobody here it has property.com or
Yeah, hold on.
properties.com.
There's plenty of people that have great names, a great portfolio, just as good as Rick. So everybody quit sucking on his whatever. I mean, and I like Rick, but it's just like, fuck enough. For one, I was just telling you, I know dozens of guys who have
No, what I
so
want
many
to know,
great
if
fucking
you get an
names, and
offer
he's
for
got a half dozen. So
500,000,
fuck it, I don't even give a fuck anymore. But
no,
Arif, go
Todd, what I'm
ahead. Arif,
saying
go
is,
ahead.
I agree. So do we agree he should probably just list his names on Afternic?
Well, no, it's like with regards to Rick, he feels like
So
every name, talk about delusional pricing. There's some names that are not great in the portfolio, but he's allowed to say, listen, I'm still not going to sell it for less than, whatever the cost of a fucking sign or whatever. I like Rick. I just, when it comes down to the portfolio, talk about the same things in the same cell from that $8 million thing. We know it wasn't. How did he get paid? It wasn't through a credit card. There wasn't big fees. The point I was trying to make about the fees is, you're right. There is. Why do if you're a company and you say we only take cash only, and you're online and you say we only take cash only, you can send us a check or you can't buy from us. Well, yeah, you're gonna cripple your business. You can't do it. So we all have to bow down to fucking MasterCard, Visa, and sometimes American Express. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of that. How can we do the same thing, make it frictionless? That's why you see these X402, what Stripe's doing and what we're trying to do at Pay Direct is how can we get it so it is as
You
frictionless
can't.
as it
You
is
can't. And
currently?
we're domain investors. We preach about how brand is so important to the success of your business. And then we're saying stuff like, oh, how do we get around these brands like GoDaddy and Visa and MasterCard that are taking 2%, 3% of our fees? Like,
It's not us. Josh, you said it's all businesses. For years ago, people think I want to buy
oh,
direct.
exactly.
I
And the
want to
reason
buy
why we
directly
use
from
them is
you, and I want to cut
because of
out
what
all
they've
middlemen,
invested,
all extra
in their
fees.
brand, what they've invested in their technology to make our lives easier. Like, we're not. Why do you want to get around them for
Well,
2,
one,
3%? Why?
it's like
They
saying, why
make
do we want to
everything
get
more
around
simple.
credit card fees?
yeah, even when GoDaddy bought Dan and went from 9 to 15%, I was like, yeah, you know what? I get it, and you know what? It's not that bad overall. At 15%, that was it. Now, Todd, I think oftentimes we talk about this. I understand your frustration, and I think it's frustration for all of us. I think the bigger question is not forget the 3% for the credit cards, right? That's, as Josh said, like that's unavoidable, right? It's just part of doing business, and most people want that. Most buyers want that just as a security. They put in a credit card, and that's that. But I think on a different level, I think the dilemma that especially I know you've had is like, okay, what do I do? Do I do my own landers and have 5% commission, right? Either through the GoDaddy or whatever the quick links that is provided by the different services that have that. You go through escrow, whatever it is, or and doing that 5%, I risk paying 25% when it gets sold at Afternic, or will I sell enough domains, like I won't lose as much sales just by only having my own landers, that it can compensate for the whatchamacallit, the 25% difference, right? Because if you sell 90% of the domains you sell at Afternic, but on your own landers by the strength of your domains, then you're winning, right? By not putting them in Afternic. But like I'm pretty sure that's not the reality. Everybody's going to be a different, one word's obvious that would work, but a portfolio of mine certainly wouldn't, right? For me, I need to put my stuff in Afternic, and I'm okay with that, right? At 15%. all this other stuff. That's when I start to gripe. But like at a root 15%, like I'm okay with that. 10% at Spaceship, I think that's very, very fair. Now, I understand your frustration because we do not know what domains we will sell on our landers if it sells through Afternic, right? We have no idea. That buyer, would he have taken the time to go to your lander and go through your obscure checkout? I mean, Josh is saying no. I think it's case by case, but I think it's not all or nothing, right? There's a certain percentage. It'll be a different answer for most people, but I think for the most part, what Josh is saying is true. You want to have your domains on Afternic, and you in most cases use their landers, with the exception of maybe really high-profile names or very good names that you think a lot of people will think of otherwise, right? Again, it's not absolutes in this business, but overall, I think 15%, 10%. I don't think we need to really waste all our time and energy finding other solutions to save 1 or 2%. When it's 10% and 15%, yes, but it is what
That's
it
why
is.
you let somebody else find the solutions, and when they finally have one, then you look at it. But I will say, yeah, about Afternic, most of the sales I've always seen mine 2/3 come through the registration path. So because as domain investors, we've never always got together and told people when you want to buy a domain name, go to the domain name. They don't. What they'll do is they'll go to their hosting company or their registrar and they'll check registration path. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't give up those sales registration path. But if we did know that 90% of your sales came through a lander, we probably would have spent more time. Anyway, let me say, okay, we're going to be here 15 more minutes. I wanted to get to something that I think domain investors would can really use some information, and that is about sometimes we add keywords to domains we're registering, we're out there buying on the aftermarket, and sometimes they, some of us have data and we know those might seem like great keywords, but they don't sell. Good keywords to me are, excuse me, like pro or pay, or I like market. But Josh, you mentioned a word like artificial. I don't know how that came up, but I want to ask you, artificial and other names. What are words that you notice people maybe invest in, but you just think that is not a great keyword to add to a domain name? Give us some examples. Artificial and what others?
Gosh, you're putting me on the spot with other keywords here, but gosh,
Well, first, why did you say artificial? Tell us a little bit about what was behind that.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm looking at usage, and there's a little bit of usage for artificial. I went onto Crunchbase afterwards and did a little analysis, and it's interesting. A lot of the companies that did use artificial in their brand had actually ended up rebranding, and like I think like there was one called like Artificial Solutions, and that was one of the few that had raised money, and now it's like a one word .ai. Um, Essentially the issue is that um, artificial is not a good thing in most people's mind. Kind of represents fakeness. Um, and I think business generally wants to give off vibes of something more real. It's also not not a word that's typically used when we're talking about AI. It's like we either use AI or we say intelligence or super intelligence or like and most people just generally avoid the word artificial. So um, that's why I said that. Are there instances where the word would make sense in certain instances? Yeah, sure. And a lot of my decisions are always just based on usage, right? Not based on sorry, not based on feeling. Um, so if the data says otherwise, then go with the data. But you know, as you begin to analyze data more, I think that your gut gets more accurate as well. So, and I just want to say, guys, this is a little bit off topic, but if you don't speak to Todd very often, or if you haven't thanked him, you should thank him for all of these spaces that he does every week with the domain law show and then this show. He shows up every week. He puts up with a lot of shit, and he's always on time, and he's very, very good at it. So, um, I wouldn't be coming here and doing this if it wasn't for him. So, if you
I
haven't,
definitely,
if you
I'll
haven't
second
reached out
that.
to him before and said thank you, you should.
I'll second that, Josh.
Todd.
Todd, you're terrific.
Love you, Todd.
But just speaking about the word artificial, you have to have a certain level of confidence, even though it's the keyword for artificial intelligence that's taking everything. This is just a little humor that I read that yesterday there was a post that 12 they asked this question to 12% of the population here in America when they thought that Noah of Noah's Ark was married to Joan of Arc. Okay. So
That's funny.
there's a level of intelligence that domainers have that's a little higher up, or they're forward thinking, getting engaged in something that everyone is involved in, but most people don't even know what it's about.
That was really funny. And Josh, thanks for the good words. I know Josh can tell. He's been around me enough to know Todd's getting frustrated. Somebody need to, you know. Well, you're appreciated, Todd. Don't freak the fuck out. Be here next week. And thanks for doing all. But thanks, Josh. And about the domain investors and me saying trying to bypass fees. We want it. We don't mind paying the fee. That's like a lot of us. We're the ones defending even 15, 20, 25, 30% commissions, whether it's at you're a newbie over at Adam and it's your first year and you sold a name and it was a 30% commission in their premium marketplace, or you got the boost on at Afternic. Listen, if somebody earns it, that's like somebody can sell my name, and if I tell them I want this much and you triple it, I might give you 30, 40, 50% commission. We'll pay. When you earn it, we'll pay. It's just sometimes we also want to be acknowledged that when we have a great name and someone comes to you directly, you'd like to have, and it really is, it's never been there. It's not our fault, but this trust where people think, listen, I know it's you. I'm going to send you the money, and then you send me the name. And many times we have to sometimes send, guys have done it, we'll send the name. Bruce talks about it, Ish talks about it. When you're speaking with someone and they're like, hey, you've come to an agreement, but yet since you're not using escrow, how do you do the transaction? So they get the name the same time you get the money. Usually somebody has to pull the trigger first. So you may send the name and then they pay you, and you love it because that direct transaction, even if it's, like I said, wire, it's very minimal fee. So when no one else is involved and it really is buying directly from, we just want to think, all right, well, no one should stick their hand in then. And it's always been frustrating because when we haven't been able to determine when someone really just came to the landing page and they were willing to buy, even if it was just our own lander. And for years, I had all my names going to belairlaw.com. It was, basically I was getting leads for an attorney friend of mine, but I would have all my domains go there to a page that said, this domain is for sale. And it was official. This domain is for sale. Fill out this form with your contact information. And I realized, like I said, 2/3 of my names still sold through the Afternic registration path, the GoDaddy registration path, but yet 1/3 of those names I could avoid, that people were coming directly to the name, wanting to buy it directly from the owner. And I thought, in that case, listen, there's nobody I need to break off, only unless they wanted to pay with a credit card. And then I know I got to those fees, but usually it was wire or or PayPal, something like that. So I'm just getting to domain investors. Listen, if you sell our names and you put in time, it's like, say you're a real estate agent. If you're going to set up the house, you're going to market it a bunch of platforms, or you're going to go to a law conference and sell my name, but we're going to pay you. Add the money in the cost of the name, but you can make your commission. We want to sell these names. It's just when there's no outside source doing any work. And then for years we've always paid 10, 15, sometimes even more commission, and it was really no one did any work. Okay, we're going to be here for 10 more minutes. There was something I
But
wanted. Can't
Todd,
remember.
I know on landing pages that most people that I know have, that's their own landing page. There still needs to be some kind of, you know, certificate of credibility, and I put, all sales through escrow or something like that. You put a backup there, so someone who isn't familiar with buying directly from the domain owner, they feel safer that they have some kind of, transaction company being the third party.
Yes, and I think many times that's why a lot of us are doxxed, and you might say, "Yeah, this is me. I'm over there on LinkedIn. I also have this account where, whether it's on eBay, that I've done 100,000 transactions at 100% positive feedback, or you can find me on whether it's this other business website." Bottom line is, for those that aren't doxxed and they want people to uh, basically trust them, yeah, you're going to have a much harder time. A lot of us have built reputations, and even if it's just in the domain space, that's like a lot of people. Rick Schwartz. A lot of people, they'll go to a site, they don't know who he is, except still they look at the um, all the stuff he's got there. Apparently, he's the king of domains. Then you search his name and you realize, all right, so he is a real guy. He's started some of these events. He's spoken over here. I mean, basically, like I said, you people will feel comfortable, and then bottom line, he's like, "Hey, call me if you want one of these valuable assets of mine. Call me." But we have a ton of friends, a lot of us, and some of them are here in the room. You eventually know, okay, this is the guy I'm buying from. Let me do some research. So he is for real. I still want, if I don't feel comfortable enough doing a transaction with him directly by wiring him money, then there's still some reasonable ways to do it, and that's through escrow.com, like Brad's saying, or just having a any other lawyer get
Yeah, no,
involved.
but
And
you also, what you just said about having LinkedIn where they could research you, you need to have some credibility maybe outside of the domain industry so someone can feel comfortable.
as we wrap up today, if you go to dnxshow.com, you can see some of the things that I wanted to touch on. But so uh, it was Elliot that put that he was, how he looks at names every day, and he now is starting to use ChatGPT to help him out a little bit. But when it comes to identifying names, but Josh, I wanted to ask you, have you? I mean, when you do experiment with any of the AI agents and saying, "Hey, go to DNX.com and find this for me, or do that for me," have you done some things like that before, like trying to use outside AI to see how it responds to, you know, opening up DNX.com? I mean, because now they'll go to websites and they'll search and do stuff. I guess my point is, are you using any of the AI agents to help you find names? But have you also used AI agents to sort of comb through your own website, your own company, and see how if it provides any worthwhile results or works at all?
Yeah, good question. I haven't, uh, and I don't, but I believe that I will, and I believe that we will. DNX will have some sort of functionality for that going forward. Uh, well, I don't believe. I know that we will because we're building it. Um, yeah, it's definitely the future of discovery.
Now that's a really good question. Also, because I was wondering if you do the a search, Josh, to say you keep putting in, I'd like to know what DNX.com has. You could train the bots to propagate your name when those questions might be asked by someone else. Is that something that is possible?
Sorry, say that again.
If you start questioning, or Todd, we start questioning your AI, whichever one you use, and you put in, tell me some names that are on DNX.com, where you start promoting your
Mm,
name on that bot to start training the bot to
mm,
propagate your brand.
Yeah, we wouldn't do anything like that. In terms of that's just not how we would. That's just not how we would do it. We wouldn't want to. I'm going to use the word artificially. We wouldn't want to artificially promote names over others if, like, by just because we own them. That wouldn't work. But
No, no, I'm not talking about individual names. I'm talking about your company, to promote your company.
yes, I guess yes, certainly, yeah.
Is that how the AI spider
Um,
works?
well, I guess the tools are going to be, and the agent is going to be, will be DNX branded, so it'll all go through there.
Okay, thank you. Cool.
So much exciting stuff going on in this space. I mean, and I say that, and I'm serious about it. We're going to be here. We're here every Thursday, and it's really not just because I'll cuss sometimes, but and so will Josh. Is we're uncensored here, meaning no one's on top of us telling us what we need to say, what topics we need to discuss. Some weeks there's more controversial stuff going on in the domain space. I don't know, discussing that. Sometimes it's interesting, but it really sometimes doesn't help us out as domain investors. The focus here is going to be, how do we become more successful domain investors? And I joked around in the post, you buy names, just sell them. Now you're a domain investor, and then people talk about, buy low, sell high. Listen, domain investing is not easy. A lot of us, some of us do it, let's say, a smaller percentage of their time per week than others, but we're all in this together, and really can. There's enough, everyone can make money. We want everybody to get faster, get better, get more efficient. It's like we're all part of, the running club. Everyone can improve. So it doesn't hurt. This guy gets a lot better over here. It doesn't take away from you. But so one thing I'm going to do is focus on, domain investing topics, really picking Josh's brain, and not, even if he was just a domain investor, it's fun having these conversations, but knowing, Josh, that you have built DNX and all the tools that you're, allowing the general public to use through DNX, but really just those two areas, building a company that assists domain investors, and then being a domain investor yourself. So thank you for, doing this every week, but we're going to really, like I said, focus on domain investors, how it can help. And then finally, what's most important is, we get some of the same guys that come up here, and we really appreciate it. And I'm telling you, I really do, because sometimes it's just more difficult than other weeks to keep the conversation flowing. So we really want some new folks to come up. A lot of you guys that are in the crowd too, love to hear from you. I mean, and I understand sometimes I'm in rooms, I just want to listen, but please, maybe once a quarter or once a month, come on up and share your insights. And then I'm going to end, I can't believe this, with Ragu. We got 1 minute because I got to get off here and change shirts because I got to get on a Zoom call.
Todd,
What's going on?
I'm patiently waiting. I'm patiently waiting, and I wanted to be nice to you guys. But this is not fair. 1 minute. What do you mean 1 minute? I'm a slow talker. I want 4 minutes. Okay, you have 4 minutes to talk with me. So I have few things which is not that important, but I will love to. I always in my mind whenever I come to DNX show, and I'm being honest. Okay, I really do not understand the DNX concept. Okay. And Josh never introduced directly to me or in public what is DNX is all about. So my suggestion is this. That's okay about me, but my suggestion is for the newcomers, including me, I like to know what is DNX is all about with introduction each session, so that newcomers know and will have understanding what the DNX is all about. And I think there's a positive note. I'm talking about it. And I personally want to understand where these names are coming from, what's the role of Josh in it, expert, and the website, and this, what's the involvement of GoDaddy and others, and how the structure works. This is my knowledge purposes I'm asking. And I never got to understand that, to be honest. Okay, that's one thing. I always had this in my mind, so today I said it. Okay, so that's one thing. Josh, and whenever you like, just help me to understand what's this. I always believe this is all the names. Let's say you have 3,000 names, that's all yours, and you selling it. Thank you very much. That's the way I know only. I don't know more
That's
than
not the
that.
case, Ragu. And I know you're going to have to come back next week, and we'll
Yeah,
start with you. But listen, you made up a good point, and Josh will. I love to even ask Josh too. How did the idea? How did DNX start? You've been
yeah.
innovating, and then where's tell us a little bit about the roadmap. But Ragu, you're not asking Josh something that um, other new folks who would be coming into the room. So you're really doing it on their behalf. Hey, so tell me
Yeah,
about DNX. And you know what? It's evolved
next time.
because even I have a lot of questions to say a lot or several because I'm searching things there too. And I like, some of the things I'm finding, but there's new features. It's evolving and there's a lot ahead on the roadmap. So you asked a good question, Ragu.
Okay, so let me. I still have 3 minutes.
No,
Okay.
no, you don't
So
have three
second thing.
minutes. I got to fucking
Oh
call at
fuck.
noon, and I got to, like
Okay,
I
okay
said,
then.
change my shirt, use the restroom, and fucking eat an apple. So that's going to be it
You
for
know,
today. Thank you,
I'm done
everybody.
with
We'll
you.
see you
I'm done
next
with you, Todd.
Thursday,
Yeah.
10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here. Check out Ish's room on Saturday morning. It's a great room about domain investing, and of course the law show we do every Tuesday. But that's it for today. Enjoy the rest of your time, whether it's evening or morning, wherever you're at. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Todd.
See you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Todd.